What's up, everybody? I'm B. Francis Clark.
And I'm Anton Anderson.
Welcome to Sky is Black. Today, we are practicing Ujamaa. In one of our previous episodes, we talked about the fact that one of the ways that we can move forward collectively as a people around the world is to support global black businesses. And so that's what we're actually going to do today.
Right.
We always need to find things, always need to purchase things. And so the new standard, the new way that we do this going forward is to be very intentional about it. You were about to say what Ujamaa means.
Yeah, Ujamaa is Swahili for cooperative economics.
Yes.
And for those of you who are coming from our audio podcast, we do an occasional spin-off episode because we could spend every episode talking about this.
Yes.
But also for those of you who celebrate Kwanzaa, it's also one of the days of Kwanzaa dealing with how do we support each other?
Yes.
How do we support each other, not just emotionally and physically, but how do we support each other economically? And what we've taken this to do is taken it to make sure that we're harnessing our economic power. You know, if you look at some of the larger product lines, we've talked many times in the past about real paper, for example, and which creates bathroom tissues, paper towels, things like that. You shifting your purchasing to that versus buying, whatever Procter and Gamble type of product creates a couple different things. One, you are empowering a small business. And while on this show we're focused on folks from the Black diaspora, but if you're purchasing from any small business, you are going to create you're more likely to create tighter cycling of the dollars, because the profits when you buy through a major corporation are going to get diffused out to shareholders and to some guy getting even wealthier than he already is. Whereas in a small business, they're more likely to spend money in their community. They're more likely to pay people more fair wages. They're more likely to have greater economic impact in the communities where they're based. And if then they're also black-owned businesses, you also are going to increase the likelihood of them supporting the black community in particular. And
that's what we are about,
supporting
the black community in particular, supporting black folks, black dollars in black hands. Shout out, brother Assad.
Now, for those of you who aren't part of the black diaspora, you might say, well, why would I want to do this? And
they may not.
You may not, but I would say.
But we have a cultural demand upon us to do so. If there's going to be a future for black people, for black businesses, it means that we as black people need to support black entrepreneurs and black small business owners. And so, yes, some people may be interested in doing so. We have the demand to do so and the opportunity and the joy to do so.
Right. And my whole point was that, even if you aren't part of the black diaspora, why would you want to do this? And why ought you do this? Is that at least in America, and you might expand that out to the global south, these are the groups that are challenged economically in the main. And so if we're trying to move all of us, all of our society, all of humanity forward, then you'd want to put your attention to that and help, because frankly, Procter & Gamble is going to do just fine either way, whether you buy from them or not. And whereas if you're able to help a small business or a business that's in an underrepresented community, you can then help all those groups also come up and level up.
So the issue is, how do we put this into practice? So we have a spin-off podcast where we've been talking about the things that we've been doing on our own to support black businesses.
Yes.
We've talked a couple of times on the video version of this podcast, some of the things that we've purchased lately in support and in the spirit of Ujamaa. But we have to put that into practice almost on a daily basis. To me, the way that we go forward is to, before we buy anything, we have to say, okay, is there a black-owned version of X product?
Yes.
I need to get a wrench. Is there is there a black-owned company that makes a black wrench? Is there a black-owned company that makes, X, Y, and Z that makes.
Well, what I was going to ask you is, would you consider if it counted as Ujamaa or Ujamaa-ish, if it is a black-owned retail store? So they're selling Stanley wrenches or whatever brand of mainstream wrenches.
Yes.
But if it's a black-owned hardware store, does that count?
Yes, it counts.
And so
it may not be a capital Ujamaa, but certainly a lowercase
Ujamaa, okay,
for sure. But it definitely counts because that is a business, a black-owned business that we would have an opportunity to support. So yes.
Okay. So, and part of the reason I was asking is that more than anything else, dear viewer, is the whole idea of being intentional with your spending and intentional about the impact. I mean, the whole rise of B corporations, benefit corporations, has been to make sure that the power of your dollars goes towards this. Now, one thing that we've discovered over our time of doing this is that it's a lot more work. And at least in our household, there are reality shows, and there's a whole book that was written by a family that said, we're going to throw out everything in our house and start from scratch.
Yes.
And good for them.
Yes. If you talk about sort of a B Corp, if we want to sort of playfully say Black Corp, B to B, black to black, we can certainly, make fun of those folks.
I'm not making fun of them at all.
But that is not just sort of keeping it, 100. That's 110. They did not 100%, 110%.
And truly good for them.
And for us to really sort of move forward, it's really that kind of thinking that it says, okay, as much as possible, we're going to support black businesses. And we're saying the same thing. It's being sort of deliberate and conscious. Mm-hmm. Before I buy said wrench, is there a black-owned retailer that sells wrenches, or is there a company, a black-owned company that makes wrenches? If I'm knowledgeable about these things, more often than not, I can make the correct cultural decision. And so that's what we need to do, in my estimation, constantly with every decision, every purchasing decision that we have to make.
Sure.
So it's a new way of, at least for me, a new way of living and moving through the world. I mean, it's not just, okay, let me go down to Ralph's, let me go down to, Stater Brothers, let me go down to Aldi and get the things that I need. It's like, okay, stopping. It's okay, what do I need, and how can a black-owned company meet that need?
Yes.
And not just sort of within the United States, but globally. I mean, we're in a brand new world right now. I mean, there are black-owned companies all over this planet that need our support. And they're not going to survive. We are not going to survive unless we do so. And so going to your point about the family who said, okay, we're going to toss everything out and do everything black, that might be extreme, but,
yes,
it's on point.
Yes. And my whole thing is that if for the exercise and for the book, you're going to throw everything out and start from scratch, mm-hmm. or if you're starting out launching a brand new household, mm-hmm. Truly, I wasn't making fun of them. Good for them. For us, for just speaking to my specific household, mm-hmm. we're fully formed. Before we went on this path, we have a household, and my wife has a preference for certain products, and my kids have preferences for certain products, and we have certain specific needs in our products and certain values that are embedded in our purchasing decisions. But
here's the question, if I may.
To my point,
if I may interrupt you for just
go
a
ahead.
Second. There are certain things that you're looking for in the products that you have.
Yes.
But again, going back to the knowledge principle, if we investigate black-owned alternatives to these things, you might be surprised.
Well, that's what I was about to say, is that I believe, and thus far in this mm-hmm. journey, mm-hmm. we have been able to find effectively like-for-like products. Now, admittedly, it's taken a little more work.
Yeah.
And one of the things that has been a little bit of a criteria, because when you go to a retail store, the Krogers and Safeways of the world, you can buy, one of something and try it out. And there'll be like an end cap display that says, new item, try this, for promotional 15% off or whatever. And you see it on websites too. But in many cases, for a lot of these things, they're like, well, you have to buy a case of it or whatever. And so part of what has had this journey be a little bit slower for us, in our household in particular, has been, once again, it's got to be like for like. And so one of the challenges that I'm ready to take on is to continue to drive on intentionality. And let me tell you a little story. Part of that is that for a while we were locked into, and I say locked in quotes, we were locked into a certain series of brands because of a family relationship. My father, God rest his soul, was an Amway distributor. Mm-hmm. And I know, yeah. But actually the products are fantastic. And so and in particular, like a lot of the skincare products and the detergent products were actually really good for those who had sensitive skin. And ever since I was a child, I've had sensitive skin. And so the laundry detergent in particular was a kind of a double win, because it was good for my skin, didn't cause me to break out, and same thing for my kids. But also I was able to support my father's business, and there's no Ujamaa like supporting your family business.
Amen.
However, since that time, my mom has chosen not to continue that business, and so the incentive I've had to continue to support those product lines has mostly been through preference, and through habit, and through inertia. And so when you brought this up to me, for this episode today, and saying, okay, well, what else do you need to get? I wasn't necessarily thinking about like brand new things, like new things that I don't already have, but more about continuing.
But it can be those things too.
It can be. And, this water vessel that you have here.
That's right.
With your delicious beverage in it.
That's right.
Is a good example of that.
And beverage is correct, because while this is a water bottle, I have to confess it is laced with a little bit of lemonade.
Okay,
so
right on. So, but for me, it's about being intentional for like. And so right now, and this is probably a little too much inside baseball, dear listener, right now we're beginning to run a little low on dish soap, as a silly example. And what my prior habit, catch that, prior habit? My prior habit was to then build up a cart and then say, okay, well, I need this, and I need laundry detergent, I need some vitamins, whatever, and build up a cart until I hit the minimum order and then say go. And since then, I've begun looking around, and in particular, I found this company called Natural High, and that's natural, HIYY.com, and they sell a dish soap. And they sell a dish soap at a reasonable price in a 2-pack. I don't need to buy a whole case of it, because one of the things that has been my criteria has been the ability to try it. Because if it isn't like for like, then I don't want to be stuck with a case of this stuff. But at the same time, their dish soap in particular is it's meant to not be like not phosphates and other chemicals, and so it was biodegradable, which is one of the things I liked about the dish soap that we were buying through my father's business. And I liked the idea of it still being a good degreaser, a way of being able to get rid of and do a good job of cleaning. And so I want to try it out, and I'm going to buy this 2-pack, 32 ounces of it, and see how it goes. And if it's like for like, then I'm going to become a customer. And that, dear viewer, is the thing. It's one thing to do a one-off.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's one thing to do the one-off, but then we're going to have an ongoing relationship. We're going to have a standing order. And yet, with this challenge that you presented to me as well, the thing when I look up on my phone and my reminders list of what's on my Costco list, I also see I have tall kitchen garbage bags. once we're about halfway through, we buy some more. And I found another company, which I haven't finished reading about yet, that then also sells that. And it's a 13-gallon from Swaz, SWAA apostrophe S, Swaz kitchen trash bags. And so we're going to incorporate that.
Black owned?
Black owned. And so.
And black owned?
Black owned.
Okay.
Black owned.
Okay.
And so the intentionality, and much in the same way that, and quite frankly, I'm expecting in our household for nobody to notice, because if it's like for like, no one's really paying deep attention to what dish soap we have. No one's paying deep attention to what type of kitchen garbage bag we have. People were paying attention to bath tissue, but I got no complaints, so that was good. And so,
is there value in your estimation in telling the children these things that we have here are from black-owned companies, that black people made these things?
We've said that. We've had that conversation.
I'm just asking. I'm not saying that you should. I'm asking. Do you think that there's value in that?
We have.
I say that all the time to my children, and it oftentimes goes in one ear and out the other ear. It's like, yes, daddy, yes, daddy, yes, daddy, yes, daddy. Yes, it's black-owned. It's great.
My kids are too young, really, I think, to completely wrap their heads around it. 8 and 4. But when I've talked to my 8-year-old, I've talked to my son about it, it hasn't been something we've really dwelled upon. But when we've talked about what you can do in your life, what some of the possibilities, like you could own a business. I said, there's all kinds of, and he would say, a business like yours, Daddy, where I'm a consultant. I'd say, yes, and maybe you can own a business that makes a product, that sells a product. I said, for example, our paper towels are from a black-owned company. The toothpaste is from a black-owned company. There are other things, the shaving cream that Daddy uses for shaving is from a black-owned company. The lotion that you're using in your hair is from a black-owned company. And so we talk about that, like I said, largely in passing. But I think that as children begin to get a larger sense of the world, they can get a sense that they can move in any space they want, and in any space they choose, and can have the fact that they wouldn't necessarily know the difference when I swap it out, to me is a benefit. It's a feature, not a bug, because it's, in many times in this society, the default is what is presented through a white lens. And so if what they think is coming through the default mode is actually coming through something else, I think that can actually be a pleasant surprise without having to harp on it.
And I'm not saying to harp on it. I'm literally asking the question. Do you think there's value in that? Again, my children are a little bit older, about to be entering high school.
Right.
And so, we have been able to have those kinds of conversations. They're too young to really understand the significance of those conversations. But a certain kind of seed has been planted in their hearts, and at least being sort of mindful of that which is black owned. But anyway, that's a separate topic. We can do a whole episode just on that. So you have found 2 new black owned products that you are considering bringing into the Anderson household, and will only find a permanent home in the Anderson household should Mrs. Anderson ultimately give the green light to those things.
Or equally good is for her to be indifferent about it and say, okay,
whatever.
As long as it's not a problem, if it's like for like, it's kind of under the radar. And truly, that really is the criteria, is that it be like for like, both in terms of cost, quality, and performance.
Yes. And the main point that I want us to really sort of stress today is, again, being very intentional and deliberate about what we're doing. Again, not just going down to the corner store and buying something, but literally taking the 5, 10, 30 minutes to figure out, okay, these are the things that I need. Who are the black-owned companies that can meet this particular need? And when I do this process, I'm always surprised to find that almost every single thing that I may need, there's a black-owned solution for that. And we need to be in the practice of identifying those things, identifying those companies, and supporting those companies. And so what we're talking about today, what we're doing today, needs to be an ongoing process.
So what do you got?
A conclusion to this episode.
So in particular, just to be clear, for the kitchen bags, it's swaas.co. So that's SWAAS.co. And
With a silent Z and X in there.
And then for the dish soap, it's naturalhigh.com. That's natural, HIYY.com. And they have lots of other different products there. But for me, part of what we're doing is the goal is for it to be a sustainable, ongoing purchase.
Yes.
So I'm looking. We'll talk about new things and specific things, but in particular, talking about ongoing, sustainable purchases. So, and we're paying for them. This is not like a sponsored deal. Even though if they want to send me some kitchen garbage bags, we'll take it. But this is something that we're actually paying for, and it's an ongoing part of our household effort. And to me, that, dear listener, is really the goal, because if everyone did that, if the entire Black community in America and the Black diaspora, if we took, kitchen garbage bags is, I'm not even sure, 1% of household expenses. But if we all made that shift, it'll make a big difference for that company.
Yes, it will.
And then that company will then make a big difference in our community.
Hopefully.
Well, hopefully. And at the very least, once again, because it's a small business, those dollars are going to likely recycle more within the community at a minimum, and ideally help the community at large. And so that's really what we're talking about, and that's what we're aiming for, is using our economic power to improve our lives specifically, but also our community broadly.
B2B, black to black. That's what we're talking about.
Back to black, sky is black.
Sky is Ujamaa.